The movement phase, and it is on a knife edge. Hello and welcome to another SBG Battle Report from Tabletop Ramblings. This is the battlefield for today's battle. It's going to be hold ground, so there is a central objective which both sides are rushing towards and trying to claim, this banner here. For VPs, if you have more models within 6 inches of that central banner, then you get 3 VPs. If you have more models, if you have double the number of models, then you get 5 VPs. And if you are the only one with models within 6 inches of that banner in the centre, then you get 7 VPs. You also get 1 for killing the enemy leader, and rather for wounding the enemy leader, and 2 for killing. There's also a point for breaking the enemy team, and that's 3 if you break them and you are unbroken. The game ends randomly on a 1 or a 2 once one side is broken, and it's Maelstrom deployment, so we'll get straight into priority for turn 1. Actually, just quickly, we'll go over the armies before we start. So this is a 400 point battle between the Dwarves and the Goblins, and the Goblins are led by Dwarves, the Goblin King. He has 4 warriors with shield and 4 with spear and shield. He also has 2 with a bow, and he's got the Goblin drum. We also have this captain here, who's got a banner just so that he stands out a little bit, but obviously there's no banner effect. He has with him the exact same warband, just without the drum. And then over here we have Groblog, again with the same banner, with the same warband rather, but without the drum. Over for the forces of good, we have the Kingdom of Moria. We have a King's Champion. He's accompanied by his 2 bodyguard banners. There are also 2 Khazad Guard, and then 4 warriors with shields and 3 with bows. There's also Balin himself, again with 3 bows, 4 with shield, and then 2 Khazad Guard. As we said, it's Maelstrom of Battle, so the deployment for this scenario is randomly assigned board edges, so all that's left to do is first turn priority. And it goes to Evil on the red dice. First warband to roll on the table for Maelstrom of Battle was Dwarves, the Goblin King, with his drum and his warband. Rolling a 5, they've come on from their choice, east or west, and decided to come in on the right flank to try and give the drum some protection. Next up, rolling a 2, which is also east and west, but enemy's choice was Groblog, who was placed on the exact opposite side of the board. And the same for the captain, splitting up the Goblin force, ready for the Dwarves to come in their turn. Turn 1 movement for the Dwarves. The King's Champion rolled a 4, which is anywhere he chooses, north or south, and he came on as close to the objective as he could, running in directly in the middle. Sadly, Balin rolled a 1, and not spending might does not enter this priority. Turn 2. And it goes again to the Goblins. Turn 2 began with the Goblins on the left flank, marching up as quick as they could to get towards the centre and to head off the Dwarves. Over on the right flank, Dwarves again just headed towards the centre, but leaving 2 of his archers with the drum, not knowing where Balin would appear, just to give it a little bit of protection. That was needless though, as Balin rolled a 4 and decided to come in just near the rest of his force to form a bit of a spearhead, separating the 2 forces of the Goblins and heading as quick as they can towards that central objective. 2 shooting sees pretty much every archer having moved full towards the objective or into a better position, except for this little lad who is looking for a shot on these Dwarves here. He's going to be shooting one of those archers, and he's hitting on a 5 because he stayed still. But he's missed. Fire. These 2 Dwarves take their shot at the Goblin that shot at them. Hitting on 4s because they stayed still. One of them hits. rolling to wound, needing a 5. Nothing. Field at the end of turn 2, shaping up as we go into turn 3 priority. And it's a draw, so as the Goblins had it last, it goes to the Dwarves. The movement began with the King's Champion moving ever closer to the central objective. 2 of his archers staying to take some shots at the Goblins, moving up just a half move, as did these archers, hoping to get some shots, and then Balin advanced again towards the centre. These 3 dwarves were putting themselves in a position where they provided just enough threat to the drum that while Dwarves, when his movement began, didn't want to take the bait, felt he had to. So the Goblins in their move advanced towards the centre, but also holding off those dwarves in case they threatened the drum. The 2 archers moved up just to shield the drum and also to be a meat shield in case this archer who didn't move does decide to shoot on him. Over on the left, the Dwarven captain did declare a heroic march and moved his band right round past the abandoned, burnt out blacksmiths and round that rock towards the objective from behind, with some of his still staying within 6 inches of the captain and at the end of their move, managing to come up over this rock to jump down on it. Groblog and a couple of goblins decided that they would stay just to threaten the dwarves from this flank, to try and have them fully surrounded. And then finally the lone goblin archer on the far left side stayed still again to try and win his shooting war with those 2 dwarves. And this is how the table is looking at the end of turn 3 movement. On the left flank, the dwarves opened fire on the band there with Groblog in and the archer way over there. They'll shoot both at once, but they're prioritising that archer. Still, so forces to hit. And they both miss. The centre on that rock, the dwarf does have a clear shot at one of the drummers, so he stayed still and he needs a 4 to hit him. He hits. Cock dice. But a 3 does not wound. Again in the shoot phase, there's only one goblin that hasn't favoured speed over shooting his bow, and that is this chap, and he's going to fire on his favourite 2 targets, needing a 5 because he's not moved rather. Gets it on the 6, needing a 6 to wound. Ooh, not quite. So that's the end of the shoot phase. There are no combats just yet, although that is going to change very quickly. And so we're in to turn 4 priority. And it goes to the Goblins. Turn 4 movement saw priority with the Goblins and Dwarves advancing on the right flank into the Dwarves, who have been left to slow him down. The drum, even though there were combats, decided to move so that they'd be able to affect the centre when the time comes, and also to stay away from this pesky bowman up here. The rest of the Goblins threw themselves forward. The Dwarves managed to reach the centre first and formed a snaking line to try and castle up on the objective and fend off the waves of Goblins. On the right, Balin and a few brave Dwarves charged into the Goblins, and these 3 archers moved half to get a little bit closer to the centre and also to get some shots on those 2 exposed Goblins. The archers are ready to shoot, and the battle is about to commence. On the right flank and also in the centre, all of the Goblins have moved that have bows to get into positions to fire. Although on the left, there is this one Goblin here ready to take his shots, desperate to take down some Dwarves. So he's not moved and he's going to be hitting on 5s. But he misses. Dwarven shoot phase sees those 2 Dwarves returning fire on that bowman up there. 1 hits, needing a 5 to wound him. Sadly, not enough. Up here on the hill, this dwarf is going to shoot into that exposed shieldman. Again, needing 4s, but he misses. On the right flank, these 3 archers are going to shoot into that shieldman. Needing 5s because they've moved. They get 2 good hits. Needing 5s to wound, and there he goes. That is first blood to the dwarves. The centre of the board, the lines haven't quite clashed, but on the right, the fighting is about to begin. Begin the fight phase with this fight on the end. 1 dwarf against 1 goblin. It's a draw, and the dwarf's superior fight value wins the day. Needing a 5 to wound, and he gets it, and the goblin goes down. Across, we have a dwarf against 1 and a spearman. The dwarf will fight, and if he loses, he can rely on his armour. Well, which he does, so we're going to put that to the test. The goblins are going to need 6s to wound. No chance. The next fight will be Dwarves. We'll just back the dwarf away. The next fight is Dwarves and a spear support against 1 shielding dwarf. The spear support will be the slightly different red. Dwarves will be the normal red and green for the shielding dwarf. That is a 6 to evil and very low for good. Despite Dwarves having a high strength of 4, the armour of the dwarves is so tough that it will still be 6s across all these dice to wound. Oh, not quite. Although that one is cocked. Let's see if it makes a difference. And it does! The 6, and the first dwarf is dead. Over here we have the last fight, which is Balin and a Khazad against 2 poor, unfortunate goblins. Balin will be in green, the Khazad will be 2-handing and he's in blue, and the goblins will be in red. And it's a draw, but the dwarves have it on fight value. So we'll be re-rolling these for wounds. The blue one will need a 4, and Balin, not 2-handing, will need 5s. And that is 1 well and truly dead goblin. Spearman backs off and the goblin is down. Fighting on the right flank, a few goblins lost their lives and the dwarves are starting to make headway. Over here in the centre, however, with the objective, things are not looking quite as good as the goblins begin to swarm, ready to overwhelm the dwarven defenders. It's in to turn 6 priority. And it goes with a dwarf wiped out by a dice to the dwarves.
Movement for turn 6, the dwarves with priority had free reign as the goblins decided they would not call any heroic moves, would save their moves for more opportune moments. Balin has gone into 2. The surviving dwarves have just tried to wrap around and hold off the goblins with most of the archers and 2 of the dwarves pottering into the centre. Over in the centre, the 2 archers that were here have just advanced up to get into the fray. The line has tried to stem the goblin tide. There's even a banner getting stuck into combat. Here there's a very thin, precarious blue line charging in with the King's Champion and his banner getting stuck right into the fray. And we're about to go into how the goblins will counter the goblin move. And at the end of the movement phase, over here, the 2 archers from there have gone in to trap that Khazad, and little else has changed down here. Again, no change here. And here the goblin captain that was there has just come to lead his troops from behind. The archers have stayed still instead of engaging these to get some shots, and round here some more shuffling and engaging just to try and bring down that very brave but high defence banner in the centre, who's been forced to fight to hold back the dwarves. The dwarves are looking like they might be able to weather the storm, although the goblins do have their secret weapon, the drum, which is within 18 inches of all the fights and has not moved this turn. so it will be giving the Goblins a banner reroll in every single fight on the board. At the start of the shoot phase, the Dwarves here and just there that you might be able to see have moved, and these two there have advanced into combat, so they have no shots. The Goblin over on the left that was having his shooting war decided he wouldn't chance his hand shooting into combat, and he's running in. But in the centre, this chap up on the rock is going to shoot into him, and we'll also have these two going into him. First Goblin needing 5s, doesn't hit, and then up there, those two again needing 5s. They don't hit either. So into the fight phase. So start the fight phase. Groblog up on his rock is going to roll for his crown, which on a 4+ will allow all of the goblins around him to have +1 fight value within 3 inches, including himself. And as you can see, it's gone off on a 6, which is good because he's now even fight value to those two Kazakh guards. So we start the fight phase with the Groblog combat. The Dwarves are not going to two-hand. They'll be wounded on 5s anyway. And it goes to the Dwarves. Groblog is not going to spend 2 points of might to draw it and 3 to win, so he's going to allow those 2 to strike him. He'll be wounded on 5s. And that is 1 wound, which he's going to take and save his fate for later. We'll then come across to this fight here, Archer on 1. And it is won by the Goblin. That Dwarf will be well out of range of the banner. The Goblin needing a 6, doesn't get it. So this Dwarf backs away. Next fight there, again, 1-on-1. It goes to the Dwarf, who will only be needing a 5 to wound. But again, he doesn't quite get it. And this Goblin there can just back away. So next we'll come to this Bannerman here, so that we can see who he's against. He's against a bloke with a shield and a guy with a spear. The Bannerman will be on -1 because of his banner, but he's going to shield. Loses the fight, but if he gets a 6, he will win it on fight value. Ooh, nearly. Ish. So the Goblin striking against him failed to wound, needing a 6 to get through that armour. And then this last fight down here, we have 1 Dwarf on 1 Goblin, so they'll just both be striking normally. And it goes to the Dwarf. The Goblin has just remembered the clanging, banging sound of his drums. He does have a reroll, but it doesn't help him out. Here, the Dwarf gets a cocked dice and a 6, so that Goblin goes down. So after this Dwarf has ended the fighting down here, we're going to come up to this section of the fighting, and we have a Dwarf against 3 Goblins. So the Dwarf is going to shield because he wants to hold that line, and he wins it. The next fight up there will be that banner against 4 Goblins. Again, the banner will shield, and he doesn't win it, so he'll banner reroll himself. And that is a 5, so it would draw. Unfortunately, because of his banner, he's down 1. So it is a 4-5, and the Goblins win. The Goblins are going to need 6s to wound. The banner does have 2 fate, but he's not going to need them because he's still fine. That incredibly tough elite Dwarven armour holding out. And then finally, we've got the King's Champion against 4. King's Champion does have 3 mighty attacks that absolutely fail him. He's got that banner reroll. He's hoping for a 6 and he gets it. He does get it. So these, with his mighty strength 5 against defense 5 Goblins, are only going to need 4s to wound. Incredible. He has pushed the Spearman back and killed both of those Goblins. And that is how the fight phase is shaping up over on this flank. And so we're going to head over to the right hand side. Over here on the right, we have Groblog, who, even though he's only against 1, did not call a heroic combat because he's going to be winning them on 6s anyway. And this guy was placed not in combat with anyone, just to make sure that Durbaz, in fact, not Groblog, Durbaz wouldn't be able to catapult round and go into Barlin. Now, it's Dwarven Priority, so they get to choose the order of combats, and they are going to go for Durbaz against 1 first, because Durbaz is actually trapped.
So the dwarf isn't going to shield, he's just going to fight normally, and he's going to go for the Hail Mary and see if he can get a cheeky wound on Durbaz. And it does indeed go to the dwarves. So Durbaz, at equal fight, is going to have to really think about whether he spends might or not. At this stage in the game, and only going to be wounded on 60s, Durbaz is not going to waste any might, and he's just going to take those 2 hits. So the dwarf getting 2 because Durbaz is trapped. He's going to be wounding on 60s with 2 dice. And the lack of might does pay off, as that is not a wound. Next fight we'll do will be this dwarf against 2. He will fight normally and just rely on the strength of his armour if he loses. Going to put that armour to the test with the goblins winning. And they do not break through that armour, so it's a good call from the dwarf. Then we have 2 goblins on Barlin, so that will be 2 for Barlin and 2 for the goblin. Barlin does have the fight value, which does make the difference, except we've just remembered the drum banner, which makes no difference. That 5 was a 2, it was just not, but even so, the goblins still lose. So striking each of them, they both have shields, even though it's not modelled on the spearmen. So strength 4 on defence 5, he will need 5 to wound these. Double 1s. We'll just check the army bonus and whether it's army wide or just warriors. And those 2 1s are rerollable. Any dwarf with the Moria or Khazad-dûm keyword are allowed to reroll 1, so he will be allowed. And we've also just checked, he has Durin's Axe, which is effectively a burly 2-handed weapon. So he'll get to have a +1 to wound on these without any negative effect. So these will actually be wounding on 4s. Still makes no difference, but it's nice to know. Final fight of the fight phase is 3 goblins against a Khazad guard. Khazad guard doesn't have a shield, so he's just going to have to fight this. He's not going to 2-hand. And let's see what happens. There is +1 to the fight value of the goblins. But as they're only 2 to begin with, that takes them up to 3, and that's still not enough. That +1 fight value coming from the army bonus, and they have him trapped. But the dwarf equaling the fight. Oh, unless they can get a 6 with their drum reroll. Nope. So he is going to need 5s. Nearly, but not quite. That 4 is enough to wipe out an archer, so he's going to kill one of those archers. Down he goes, and these back away. And so that is the end of the fight phase and the end of turn 6. This is how the battlefield is looking. Massive scrum. The dwarven lines are holding quite well here and here, but sadly up here it is quite thin, and they look like they may well be getting trapped and annihilated quite soon. So this is shaping up to be a very tense battle. Let's go into turn 7 priority and keep going. 7 priority. And it goes to the goblins. The dwarves, however, are going to re-roll that dice with Barlin's special rule, Longbeards, which means you can spend a point of will to re-roll that 1. Only into a 2, which means the goblins still maintain priority because the dwarves had it last. The King's Champion debated whether to use might for a heroic move, but has decided not to. He's probably in the strongest position he can be, and he's going to need that might for later in the game. Down here there is no might, and here Barlin has decided he's going to just save his might for fighting Durbirds, and he's just going to see how the goblins move. Movement phase, and the goblins managed to tag pretty much everything except for that archer who's just moved up. And those 2 were there. 1 couldn't get into combat and 1 managed to. Other than that, this is all goblin movement, and they have surrounded quite a lot of guys. This bloke is surrounded, including a fight with the captain. Here, the goblins have managed to get in on the King's Champion, and he's spear supporting, so that if he does decide to heroic combat out, all he can do is charge him, really limiting his move everywhere things are engaged or trapped. Here, faring slightly better, the dwarves do have numbers, although there is Groblog in a trapped combat there, in a combat where he trapped, and here is the worst. Barlin trapped by the Goblin King. So, looking quite nasty for the Dwarves. Perhaps they should have called heroic moves and spent some of those resources. Time will tell. Leave it in the comments if you think we should have played that differently. So, going into the shoot phase, everything's moved with a bow except for this one Goblin Archer. And he is going to shoot this Dwarf here. Losing where my finger is there. So, he's hitting on 5s. He does hit, and he's going to need a 6 to get the first kill to archery. No, just a 2. He tried, and he failed. So, into the combat phase. So, at the start of combat, before any heroics are called, Groblog is going to use his crown, and on a 4+, it goes off, and everyone within 3 inches of him, every friendly goblin, including himself, will have +1 fight value. Following the activation of his crown, Groblog calls a heroic move. A heroic combat, rather. Balin needs to call a strike, because even though he does have the higher fight value, he is facing off against the king, who responds with his own strike, and he is trapped. And then here, the king's champion doesn't call, but the captain down here does, with his last point of might, just to try and get as many of these bodies into other fights and really cutting through the dwarves in one nasty turn. So that is the heroic moves. Let's get into the fight phase. We will endeavour to remember the drum pounding away, giving everyone within 18 inches, which will be all of these fights, a re-roll for the goblins. Please do leave a comment at the end of the video with just how many of these we miss. Be interesting to find the total. There are 2 heroic combats. Both of them are evil, so there's no need to roll off. We'll just start with Groblog and Friend against a Dwarf that has no shield, so we can't shield. The Dwarf will be in the green there. And the Dwarf well and truly loses that, and he is out of banner range, which is only a 3-inch range. So Groblog is the smaller red dice. He has 4 attacks because that Dwarf is trapped. He will be needing 5s, and then the Goblin is on the slightly bigger dice, and he'll be needing 6s. And he is annihilated. So those 2 will get to move on. And his friend have just gone into this Kazakh guard here to try and take some pressure off him. And Groblog sat up on his rock, so he's feeling fairly confident, and he will have even fight value because of his crown. So now on to this heroic combat here. There's going to be 2 from the captain, 1 and 1 against a shielding Dwarf. The captain is out of might, so it is just 4 attacks on 2. And it goes to the Dwarf. Wow, big delay in the audio there as I was speechless. The Dwarf has fended off that heroic move here from the captain, and so that does not go off, and the goblins back away. So we have done the heroic combats. We will save the strike and the combats on the right hand side till later, and we'll start off down here with a 1-on-1. That's 1 archer on 1 goblin. It goes to the goblin, who needs a 6 to wound. Doesn't get it, just a 1. So we're back here. So continuing along, it is Goblin Priority. So they are, he's just been knocked out. They are going to start here. So that will be 2 big ones for Groblog, 1 little one for the Goblin, and then 1 green one for the Dwarf. And Groblog definitely wins that. So he is trapped. Groblog doesn't get him. So again, get to re-roll those, and still no wound. So the goblins back away. The next fight is a 1-on-1 here. It's a draw, so the goblin will re-roll for the banner, the drum banner. He loses. The dwarf needing a 5, doesn't get him. The goblin backs away. Next we have the goblin with a shield, who's just going to fight normally against those 2, including the banner. The banner will be the blue dice, the green will be the dwarf, and then the red will be the goblin. And it goes to the dwarves with the banner there, getting a 5 down to a 4. So the goblin will re-roll and get a 6. So the dwarf will also re-roll and also get a 6. So the goblin thought he had it, but the dwarf wins it. And then needing 5s, the goblin survives. And he backs away. Next up we come to this scrum up here. And just before we get to it, there's a 1-on-1 there. That goes to the dwarf, but there is the drum banner, which makes no difference. And they're needing 5s, kills him. So zooming in a little bit so that we can see, we've got 1, 2, 3 on the banner, who is definitely going to be shielding there. The banner does win it, but there is a re-roll from the drum, which is not enough. So those 3 back away. We'll then do this 1-on-1. Nice away. So 1-on-1. It goes to the dwarf. He's got the higher fight value, so there's no point re-rolling, and he kills him. Next, we have 2-on-1. That dwarf's not going to bother shielding. He's seen his dwarf brethren starting to get a few kills, and he wants to join in. Oh, he definitely shouldn't have done that, rolling a 1. He does have a banner, which wins him the fight on a draw. So needing a 6 with the drum re-roll. Cock dice, needing a 6. Drum roll for the drum re-roll. It is a 6! Unbelievable. So those 2 have got him. He's not trapped, he can back away there. So do those 2 kill him? No, they don't. And then final fight is the King's Champion with 3 attacks on the 2 goblins. That front goblin is going to stab because he's pretty dead anyway. Oh, although it has paid off because they have won the fight. So King's Champion there. He's going to allow that. He's not going to spend the might. Oh, he does have a banner looking for a 6. No. So he's going to allow that. He's got tough armor. He is defense 7. So these will need 6s. No. So it paid off for him not spending the might. And that is the end of the fights there. And we'll go over to these fights and the strike off. So coming over to the right flank, we have 2 archers on 1 archer. Now, the goblin can't really do anything. I've got the wrong dice there. So, goblin can't really do anything. So he's going to stab. He nearly wins the fight. He does have the drum banner, which wins him the fight. So, stabbing, he will be re-rolling 1s. He doesn't take any stabbing damage because he won. And he's a big, juicy 6. He kills 1. Well done, Goblin. Goblins seem to only perform when you expect them to die. So then here we've got a 1-on-1. It's a draw. Well done, Goblin, for trying. But on fight value, he cannot cut it. But that 2 is not enough. So the Goblin just backs away unharmed. We then have a 1-on-1 here. It goes to the Goblin, who needs a 6. Doesn't get him. And then here, the Goblin is going to fight very un-Goblin-like, and he is actually going to shield against those 2. So those 2 will piercing strike, because they can. And they win it. Nothing the Goblin can do. He did put up a valiant effort, getting the 6. So these will be strength 4, so they will not really making any difference, but the 5 does get the kill. So he is dead. And then it's just the strike off. So now we have the main event, the final fight of the phase. We have Dwarves, King of the Goblins, with his 2 goblins against Balin. And they have both done a heroic strike. So who does that go to? It is Balin on 6 up to 7. And then Dwarves is 4 plus 1 for trapping is 5. And then 6, 7 from the strike. So it will be a draw. So Balin on the big green dice. Dwarves on the big red dice. And then the 2 little goblins on little red dice. Tie on fight value. Oh, but Balin not doing so well there. The goblins have won that, but he does have a reroll for his Durin's axe. Doesn't pay off. So the goblins have won that on a 5 to a 4. Balin will spend 2 points of might to make that a 6. Dwarves will respond to turn his to a 6. So it's a 50-50 roll-off. 1, 2 or 3 the Goblins win. 4, 5 or 6 Barlin wins. Barlin does win. So he gets to make 2 strikes. And he's going to make strikes at the Goblin King. He's strength 4 on defense 6. So that's 5, but plus 1 for his master-crafted, super awesome Durin's Axe. He gets 1 wound on the King. And the King will fate that and pass his fate. And that is the end of the fight phase and the end of the turn. This is the battlefield at the end of turn 7. In the centre, at the bottom, we have Groblog starting to gain a bit of momentum here against the Dwarves, but it's still anyone's game. Up here, King's Champion has fought the Goblins off valiantly. They exchanged kills, but not a massive amount of Dwarves dying, considering all the traps. The heroic combat didn't go off from the captain there. And then here, Barlin, probably unwisely, burnt all of his might to win the fight against the Goblin King. Won the roll-off and managed to get 2 strikes off against him. 1 dealing a wound but saved by fate. Durbers there has 1 might still, so will be able to strike or heroic move depending on what he decides to do next turn. So that is the end of turn 7 and we go into turn 8 priority. Rolling for turn 8 priority. And it goes once again to the Goblins. Barlin again is going to use a point of will to re-roll that. And it is 5. So they have won. The Dwarves now have priority going into turn 8. So for heroic moves, the captain is unable to call as much as he really wants to. That banner captain there after his botched heroic combat last turn. Groblog has decided he will call a heroic move just to try and get some traps off and take the momentum out of the Dwarves. But over here, Durbaz with 1 might to the 0 on Barlin has decided to save his for some shenanigans a little bit later. At the end of Groblog's heroic move, he's managed to trap a couple of guys and he's been able to tag what he needed to tag. The last guy to move will be this archer up here who needs a 6 to be able to jump down from his rocky outcrop and charge. It's plus 1 from Cave Dweller to make this a 5+ to be able to jump down and charge. Only a 3. So he jumps down, but he's unable to charge. And that is the end of that heroic move. So let's come back after the Dwarves have moved. The Dwarves have moved. And then the Goblins left with just a few guys untagged have managed to trap a guy up there. But that's really all that the Dwarves left for the Goblins to do. The Dwarves have managed to tie up everything they need to tie up as favourable as they can. There's also the potential for a cheeky heroic combat there into the captain. Everything engaged. Those 2 archers ran away from defending Barlin towards the centre, trying to focus on the objective, possibly at the expense of their king's life. This chap, however, does care about his king. He is going to tangle with Durbers for a turn at least to buy some time for Barlin to try and cut through some goblins, because the goblins are fairly close to being broken now. Again, everything just tagged up. The Dwarves hoping to be able to kill some guys and make a break for the drum, which, when remembered, can make quite a difference in this battle. So that is how things are shaping up after the movement phase. So we go into turn 9, I believe, into the shooting phase, which there isn't one because everything is moved full. So into the fight phase. So before heroics are called, start of turn 9 fight phase, we're going to see if the crown goes off, and it does on a 5. So Groblog's crown is increasing his fight value by 1. So start the fight phase. After the crown, we're on to the heroic combats and strikes. Durbers is not going to call, but he's going to save his might. Again, Groblog is not going to call. He's only got 1. He does have the higher fight value now because of the crown and because of the trap special rule from the army bonus, giving him courage, his fight value rather, to 5. But over here, the Dwarves, after the Goblins have declined to call anything, he is going to call a heroic combat. He is an incredible, strong fighter and a bargain at his point cost, but he's let down by only having 2 might, so that's quite a big spend for him. And to risk on trying to heroic combat through that one goblin into the captain and really make a dent in these goblins. So let's get onto that now. So the heroic combat from the King's Champion. The goblin is going to shield, so he'll have 2 attacks, and then the King's Champion has 3. And the King's Champion gets it with the 6, and he's got a much higher fight value, so he wins. He's strength 5 against defense 5, so he will only need 4s, and he gets him. So that heroic combat goes off. So that goblin is removed, and then he charges without any hesitation into the captain, and that is the fight we'll go straight to. The King's Champion has the fight value here, so he is going to try and get a 6 along with his dwarf friend. Setting the bar at only a 5. They do have the banner reroll. Desperately looking for that. Yep, there we go. That's 6. So let's see if they can wound. And that is a very dead captain. From the normal guy needing 6s, gets a wound, and then the massive strength 5 of the King's Champion easily takes out that goblin captain. Well worth the point of might on a heroic combat. So we'll stick with the fights up here, and we are going to go for the 4 goblins on that 1 shielding dwarf. The dwarf does have the fight value, but he doesn't get enough. He's in range of that banner, but a 4 is still not enough. So these needing 6s, but they are re-rolled because that dwarf is well and truly trapped. Nothing on the first set. Re-rollable. Nothing. And that dwarf takes 8 strikes, but still lives to fight another day. Here we've got a 1-on-1. And it goes to the dwarf. There is the drum banner, which makes no difference. So the dwarf, winning on 5s, gets the kill. Dwarves really putting in some work here. Here, a 1-on-1. Again, all fighting normally. Reroll for the drum, because the dwarf has the fight value. Doesn't pay off, but he survives. And then the last fight up there is the banner. He's just going to fight normally. He's seen a lot of his brothers doing some serious work. Oh dear, he's going to need a 6. Oh, that is not good. Although he's got his fate, he's got his armour, and it pays off because it would need to be a 6 to get through that defence 7. So then we'll come to this fight here. Another 1-on-1. The dwarf, the goblin rather, is going to re-roll for his drum and still fail. Not even looking the right way. He's going to spin round and pirouette, but far too fancy. Does not get the win. Just going to come down to this fight here. That's a goblin on 2. The banner will be the bigger blue dice, or green rather. And that is a win for the goblin. So banner reroll. The goblin does win. He makes strikes on the banner and wounds him. So that banner actually has 2 fate. He is a minor hero. So he's going to roll his first fate. Needs a 4+ to save the wound. He does not. Needs to 4+ this or the banner is dead. And he does. So that banner is with a spike on top rather than the crow on the other one. So we'll mark him down to no fate. That is a much more vulnerable banner. Here, he's been knocked out, but that is a 1-on-1. Well and truly goes to the goblins, but he is in banner range there. Doesn't help him, so needing a 6. The goblin fails, so he is pushed back. Then we have a 1-on-1 here. To draw, the goblin tried his best, but he can't win on fight value. And he is pushed back because the dwarf fails to wound, although that was a 1. So re-rolling for the dwarf army bonus, but it doesn't materialise into anything. So here, Groblog does have the fight value, and we'll roll all of the goblins at once, and the Groblog will be the green, and then Groblog will be the red. I can't tell my colours, and green will be the little goblins, just because they're the ones I had to hand. So he's got the fight value. He's just base 3 +1 for the crown, +1 for the dwarf being trapped takes him to 5. So he's got the 5 value. So these are Groblog's double strikes. He is strength 4, so he'll need 5s. And he gets him. So these back away because they were the ones that did the trapping. And then he is dead. 1 less dwarf. So that is the fighting on the left flank to centre. And now we have the right hand side. On the right we have a bowman on a spearman. It goes to the bowman on fight value, but there is the drum reroll which pays off. If we can get another 6, he dies. And he does! That is a dead dwarf. Next we have a Khazad on a spearman. Again, 1-on-1s. It goes to the dwarf, but if this reroll can be another 6 for the goblins, then the goblin will win. No, not quite half. So, needing just 5s from the Khazad, he does not kill. Here we have a 1-on-1, both fighting, and it goes unless. So that was a 4-4. Can he win? No, he can't. So, winning on 5s, he backs away, and then we'll do Durbers on shielding dwarf. That dwarf desperate not to die. It's going to be 2-on-2, and it quite categorically goes to evil there on a 6 to a 2, needing on defense 7, strength 4. He actually still needs 6s, which he definitely does not get. So he backs away and has successfully tied up the Goblin King there. And then the final fight is Barlin on 2 against 2 goblins who will both stab. They nearly managed to win. They do have to reroll, looking for a 6, and they get it. Absolutely massive. They have won. Now Barlin does have a reroll. It doesn't go off. So these two both stabbing. So re-rolling 1s on defense 8 will need 6s by 4s. Re-rolling 1s. Here we go. 6. No. I won. You can't re-roll a re-roll. So that is that. They managed to win. They didn't die, but they just could not get past that Dwarven King's armour. And so that is the table at the end of turn 9. So let's go into priority for turn 10. Things really start to heat up. Goblins have hemorrhaged warriors. They've lost 12 of their host to a mere 5 dwarves. But as far as percentage goes, it is roughly even towards break. So this is still an important priority for turn 10. And it goes to evil. We'll come back if there are any heroics. So with Dwarven priority, Durbaz did not call a heroic move, and the dwarves managed to tag what they needed to tag. Things not looking too bad for either side. Over here, Groblog decided to save his last point of might as well and didn't call, and he's now surrounded. He's managed to counter charge with some of his men to try and deal some damage, but up here the dwarves have managed to form a wall blocking off the few surviving goblins from that regiment and fairly conclusively tying up that objective in their favour. So this is starting to swing a little, but it is very much anyone's game. Before heroics are called, we'll roll for Groblog's crown on a 4+, but it does not go off. The crown, perhaps a little like the ring, can sense when its owner is in trouble and abandons them at that crucial moment. So on a 1, that does not go off. The goblins, crucially, Groblog's fight value does not go up. Start in the centre and the left, and we'll go to this fight here between the 2 archers, a 1-on-1. It goes to the dwarf, but the goblin is in range of the drum, which is a big 18-inch, but it still makes no difference. So needing 5, not quite, but a 1 is re-rollable with the their wealth lies in Mithril army bonus. Needing a 5, again, doesn't do it, and he cannot re-roll a re-roll, so he has backed away. We'll come back to this, which has Groblog in it, and we'll do this 2-on-1 fight. That goblin is a coward and is going to shield. Not very goblin-y, although cowardice really is. So there we go. And he wins. There is no banner in range of that fight. That's out of 3. So the shielding has paid off. And these back away just so that they can keep that wall and keep the goblins out. This goblin, however, has made it to the scary side of the wall for goblins to be, and he's going to fight him. 5 to 3. So, reroll. Needing a 6. No chance. So, needing a 5 from the dwarf. He gets his reroll ones, but no. So, he backs away. Going to back away just there. And then the next fight will be the King's Champion against 1. So, he has 3 attacks against just a bowman. So, the bowman cannot shield. So, that is 3 on 1. The bowman should definitely have declared to stab. He's won that. Not worth a point of might. So, and there is no banner for the dwarf. So the bowman needing just 6s to put on a wound. Oh no, he doesn't. And stabbing would have made no difference. So he backs away again, just to that objective to form that wall. So next we'll do these two. It's Dwarven Priority. So they're making sure they take away as many of the traps as possible that are in favour of the goblins, of course. So the goblin does win. He's got a banner. Can he get the 6? No, he can't. So, needing a 6? No. So he is backed off. And then here we have a 2 on 1. Sadly, the dwarf was unable to kill that goblin, so he still is trapped. So the dwarf will shield. Dwarf in green, obviously. The dwarf does win. But the drum is pounding in the deep. Oh, not quite enough to inspire victory. So that shielding dwarf lives to fight another day. They back off. And then we have up here. What have we got? We have a 1-on-1 just there. The goblin's going to stab. Stabbing is for brave, and ultimately suicidal goblins. That doesn't kill him, just the stab, needing a 6. And the first time in recorded history the goblin has got a 6, it is to kill himself. Oh dear, goblins. So a 1-on-1. He's going to stab as well, because it's got to pay off at some point. Possibly not today. He does have his reroll. Again. Oh dear. Oh dear. So, needing 5s. No, but he does get to reroll 1s. And I believe it was that 6, but we didn't actually catch that, so we'll just do it again. And yes, he is destined to die. So that's him down. And we do have the banner there just against 1. The banner's going to fight it normally. He's the one with 2 fate. 1-on-1. That 6 goes down to a 5, so it's a draw, and he wins on fight. But there is the banner reroll from the drum. So if this is a 6, he gets the 6. He is not going down without a fight. Obviously, the 6 from the dwarf there is -1 because he's carrying a banner. So there is absolutely nothing he can do to win that fight. And the goblin wants blood. Let's get another 6. Let's do it. Oh, a 3. But pushing him back is better than taking an axe to the skull. And so there is this fight here. Plus 1 up here. A 1-on-1. High fight value of the dwarf means the banner reroll for the drum will do nothing. 6 kills him. Goblins are getting wiped out here. So then on this flank, all that's left now is Groblog. So we'll do Groblog against 2. Will be a -1 on the banner, which will be this one. Groblog has 2. He's got no shield, but he does have his nice big rock, so you never know, he could win this. It is fight value to the dwarves, which is not good for Groblog, but he smashes it. Can they... Oh, no, looking at the wrong dice. He gets obliterated, actually, and he can't even re-roll. Oh, yes, he can, because that's the banner. So if he gets a 6... No. No. So with a lot of confusion there, swirling around, he is in trouble. So trapped, these dice will be doubled. They're strength 3 on defense 6, so these are 6s. Oh, 2 1s. And he gets away with it. That 1 can't reroll a reroll. So, Groblog kept his might for a rainy day, and it does pay off because he doesn't die with it. So then we just have 3 on 1. He is trapped, but he cannot shield because he doesn't have one. So 3 on 1. He wins. There is a banner in range. If this is a 6, he won't die. No, quite the opposite. So these are double strikes. They'll need 6s. No, abysmal on the first set. Looking for a 6. No. The Kazakh Guard survives. And that is the fighting on the left flank. Over to the right. So, on the right flank, we will begin with these 2 goblins on the Kazakh Guard. And he wins. There is no banner over on this side for the dwarves. And when I say he, I meant the goblins. So that's not enough. That rolled off. No. So he backs away. Oh dear. Everyone's going to fly back there. We then have this fight here. A spearman on a shield. Shield warrior. The shield warrior is just going to fight normally. But it goes to the goblin. So the goblin gets only a 2. And he backs off. So then we'll do Durbers with 2 attacks. The guy with an axe is just going to fight. Probably shouldn't have done that. Is he going to die for it? 6 is to kill him still, so he is still unlikely to die. Oh, but kings, goblin kings there, doing some work for the goblins. Possibly a little too late, but we shall see as Balin fights the 2 that managed to put one over on him last time. They will both stab again against Balin. And again, Balin does not do it. He does get his reroll for Durin's axe, which pays off. Tide fight the drum. If this is a 6, the goblins will clutch their lives from the jaws of George. No, not enough. So it will be strength 4 on 4 on the archer is 4 plus 1 for the axe is a 3, gets him, and then a 4 for the other guy. Not quite, but he does bring down one of the goblins, bringing the goblins precariously close to being broken. And this is what the battlefield looks like at the end of turn 10. Incredibly tight. There is just one goblin keeping them on the right side of being broken. They're not quite broken, but it is incredibly close. The dwarves starting to really do some work around that objective and holding them off. Balin still at a little bit of risk, but the objective is looking like the dwarves may well claim it. But it is still all to play for. A couple of bad rolls and the dwarves could start to really hemorrhage models. So let's go into turn 11 priority and see what happens. Turn 11 priority. And it goes convincingly to the goblins. Balin is not going to spend his last point of will to try and roll a 6 with his Longbeard rule that allows him to re-roll priority. So that is over to the goblins. At the centre there with his warriors, knows that this could well be the make or break turn and spends his last point of might to call a heroic move, which is countered by Groblog. He, assuming his mantle of responsibility as ruler, at least perceived by himself, wearing that crown, he knows that, again, this is make or break, and he counters with his last point of might. So this will be the roll-off to determine, quite possibly, the outcome of the game. And on a 4, 5 or 6, it does go to good. So good are going to be able to make that heroic move and secure that objective for the goblins. Winning that heroic move off allowed them to really consolidate their hold over here, getting lots of advantageous fights and tying up the goblins. There was very little the goblins could do. They rearranged just a little bit, but realistically they're on the back foot over there. Over here, the goblins were again... So after the heroic move going off for the King's Champion rather than Groblog, things are not looking too great up there for the goblins. Everything has been tied up in the dwarves' favour to really hold their foothold on the objective. Then over here, things are looking quite a bit better for the goblins as Balin has been engaged by 3, including Durbers, the Goblin King. So There are no shots. Everyone is engaged in combat. Let's jump straight into the fight phase. First, does the crown go off on 4+? No, it doesn't. We'll start the fight phase on the left and centre portion of the board. We'll start off with this 1-on-1. Just go to the dwarf, but the drums in the deep with a cocked dice. Oh, gutted. Does not go off. Poor goblins. 5+ to wound. And that archer does the work. Killing him there. We'll now go for Goblin Priority, so they are going to try and kill that banner. 1-on-1. In fact, no, the banner has no fate. He is going to shield. But it is not enough, despite everyone fighting to the best of their abilities. Absolutely smashing it up. With a 6s all around, the banner does take away 1 from the roll, and so the goblin has won. If this is a 6, the banner is down. Oh, a 5. The banner stays up and they're pushed back, but still alive. So, the right-hand side, we have a 1-on-1. And it goes to the goblins on a 3, but unable to wound. And then here, this final 1-on-1 goes to suspense. The dwarves, but there is the drum reroll, which isn't quite enough. So needing 5 to kill him, that is a 5. So he is dead. And then we just have this fight here. And while we didn't actually declare it right at the start, we got a little bit carried away. The goblins are well and truly on the back foot, so we will allow them to have that strike, even though it wasn't declared right at the start. We got distracted by the crown. So striking his strike. So Dwarves striking there only goes up by 1, which takes him from his base of 4 up to a 5, and then 6 with the special, not the special rule, the army bonus, which gives 1 for being trapped. Only takes him to a 6, which is Barlin's base. Barlin, obviously being out of might, has to just take that. But even fight value is not too bad an outcome for that. Serves the goblins right for not declaring. And that is a draw. But there is a reroll for both sides. Makes no difference. So a draw on a 1, 2 or 3, Dwarves and Co. On a 4, 5 or 6 goes to Good and Barlin. And it is a 1. So these now are going to be doubled. And that is Dwarves in the bigger dice needing 6s. And then the little red dice will be needing 6s by 4s. Oh dear. Oh dear. First set of strikes, absolutely nothing. But there, absolutely massive on the second set of strikes. 2 6s, which is all of his wounds. So he is going to be down to fate. So let's just check what he's got and come back. Barlin, not good. So after their point off, 2 leaders, you can always tell a leader, they're always pointing. The point off went to the goblins and 2 6s. Just checked, and there is only 1 fate on Barlin. So if he doesn't get a 4+, he is dead. A 6. Well done, Barlin. A deserved survival there. And that is the end of the fight phase. And we will go into turn, possibly 11. I am losing track. Here we go. Turn 11 priority. So I'm pretty sure that was turn 11. This is turn 12 priority. And goblins are well and truly broken now. So at the end of this turn, we will be rolling a dice. On a 1 or 2, it will end. And it is evil priority. They're broken, so they are going to have to start taking some courage tests. In the movement phase, Dwarves managed to get a 7 for his stand fast. And has managed to tag these, and he's going for another Hail Mary pass at Barlin. Over here, Groblog. That was 3. That's magic. Got a 4. Thought he had to spend a point of will rather, until we remembered the drums in the deep. +1 courage to the goblins, which actually, both rolling 7s, saved those 2 Courage 2 Goblins as well. The drum absolutely making its worth there, including one of the drummers himself. Again, rolling a 7, saving the day. The courage bonus of the drums. Hopefully, if the Goblins can survive long enough and break the Dwarves, we'll see the -1 courage that it gives to the Dwarves within 18 range doing some work as well. But until then, everything is tagged. There's no shooting. Let's go straight into the combat phase. Apologies for that. We've just lost a little bit of footage there. Good old iPhone. Groblog lost the fight but didn't take any wounds. The Banner had to shield. He was not feeling too brave, having run out of might. Managed to push the Goblin back. And round here, again, nothing too much happened, but these 2 did manage to kill a Goblin. So here we have the 3 dice from the champion +1. There's no might there, so we won't differentiate against a brave stabbing bowman. His stabbing damage to himself does nothing, because he well and truly lost that. So he is dead. That was always going to happen, that little sacrificial lamb there. We then have a 1-on-1. And definitely to the Goblin there. There is actually a Banner reroll. So if he gets a 6, no. So can this be a 6? Yes. Turn of the tide. It's all going to go downhill for the Dwarves now. You heard it here first. So he is dead. So next fight, a 1-on-1. Goes to the Goblin unless he can re-roll with a Banner. No. Here's a 6. Come on. Come on. Oh, not quite. But still, not being dead is a good thing. If the game can end on a 1 or a 2, the Goblins are in with a chance. 1-on-1. The drum re-roll. Oh dear. Need a 5. No, but Ukazad! No, not quite. Not quite. Pushing him back. We then have those 2 on 1. So again, the bigger, more translucent dice is the Banner. That's the -1. And the Goblin actually will there shield. And it goes to the Goblin, unless we can Banner re-roll this for the Dwarves. No, the Goblin has successfully pushed those 2 back. And that is the fights on this side. And so we come to the final few fights of the fight phase of turn 12. These 2 here. It goes to the Dwarf on a draw, but there is the drum re-roll. And a 3, in fact. The glare on that, I thought that was going to be a 1. Here we go. Big 6, big 6. Yes! Gets him. Come on. Come on. Always rooting for the underdog. Come on, Goblins. 1-on-1. Come on, Goblins. Oh, and he gets it. Come on. This is another 6. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, not quite. But not dying at this stage is a miracle for the Goblins. So Barlin against Durbers, and just one little guy there. Durbers and the Goblin are going to stab. Barlin, of course, going two-handed, but he's got his special rule with the axe, which means he's got no negatives from that. And it goes to the Goblins. Barlin does have a reroll. And it's only a 3. Again, out of might. He's now at the mercy of the incredibly brutal Goblins here, who are going to need 6s by 4 and just 6s. He has no might, no fate, more importantly, and only 1 wound. Come on, Goblins! Double 6s from Durbers again. And that is a dead Dwarf King. In the Battle of the Pointers, Durbers has won. Unbelievable turn in favour of the Goblins there. And now all that's left at the end of turn 12, with the Goblins going into it broken, is a 1 or a 2 to win the game. If this is a 1 or a 2, the Goblins may have clutched victory here. A 4. Not what the Goblins wanted. But let's play another turn and see what happens. The battlefield at the end of turn 12. And going into turn 13, things are very, very even. The Dwarves did some serious work until we decided that we would really start rooting for the Goblins, and then it turned. The Goblins went mental. They've killed Goblins. Goblins have killed Dwarves. They've not died, again a miracle, and more importantly have killed Balin. If they can survive and kill this turn, they could well be turning the tide. This priority is massive. Here we go. Collective cheering and rooting for the Goblins here. Oh, not quite. Not quite. The Dwarves get to move first. In the movement phase, and it is on a knife edge. We've got a Khazad charging one of the drummers, but the other did stay with his courage and is still banging the drums in the deep, giving that courage, which with a point of will and that bonus courage managed to keep Durbers in the fight. He and his fellas have run as close as they can get to the central objective, with him and his two friends in the 6-inch range. If enough Goblins survive and the game ends, the Goblins will win. So the pressure here is on the Dwarves to clear out and hold that objective. If the game ends here, it will be tight. Let's find out. No shoot phase. Everything is well and truly engaged. We'll start for a change over here. The drummer against the Khazad Guard. It's a draw. Drummer does get to re-roll. He's incredibly close to the drum. You can hear it loudly. And that is a 3. He has won. If he gets a 6, he'll really be doing some work for the Goblins. Unbelievable. Let's just quickly double check that he's not unarmed. Check. Drummers are not unarmed. Quite the opposite. He's got a club that he's beating the drum with, and he has just turned and he has smashed that Khazad Guard in the face. Well done, Goblin. Let's hope that is the start of things to come. Come on, Goblins. We are rooting for the underdogs. Let's see how the main volley of combat goes. Starting up here, we have a shielding Goblin, because the objective is more important than Goblin Pride. And he wins! Absolutely massive. Every Goblin that lives is a Goblin more on the objective, because it is within 6 inches that you need to be part of the claiming force. Here, he's going to shield again against one guy fighting normally, and then the 2 banners will be the 2 bigger dice. He's shielding. The bigger dice obviously will have a -1, and that goes to the Goblins. Re-rolling the normal guy for those 2 banners, double banner, and it still goes to the Goblin. Unbelievable. Those 3 unable to get through a Goblin, which is a real turnip for the books. And here we go. Now, it's not looking quite so favourable for the Goblins, as we have some nasty, nasty stuff coming onto Groblog. Now, Groblog has 2 attacks. He does not have fight value. He actually forgot to do his crown. But even with the crown, he would not have a higher fight value than the fight value 6 on the King's Champion. So the King's Champion will have 3 dice. 3 normal green dice. We will then have a non-2-handing on the blue. That's green actually. And then blue will be the little archer. Now they will all be piercing striking, just in case it's going to make any difference. Oh dear, that one's cocked. So only a 5 high. They do have a banner, which is not enough. So if Groblog here can get a 6, then he's in it. Come on. Big, massive, juicy 6. Oh, not enough. Drum re-roll. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, 1. He tried with the dice to kill the guys in the combat. Sadly, that does not count. And as much as he put up a valiant effort there, this could be the end of Groblog. So, defense 6, strength 5. These are going to be needing 5s. They're all re-rollable. And these will be needed. Oh, in fact, strength 6, because they're all piercing strike. These will need 4s. And these will need 5s. Oh, and he is super duper dead. He did his best. But sadly, a Goblin's best is often not enough. Groblog goes down. And then the last one of the last fights, we should say, is this one here. 2 dwarves against a shielding goblin. They won't piercing strikes, it doesn't make a difference. And unless this banner is in there for... Oh, and the banner gets it for the dwarves, needing 5s. But he backs away. He is alive. Come on, goblins. Come on. 1-on-1. This has been a absolutely monstrous swing. Come on, here we go. 1-on-1. Last combat. He's got a 6 and the dwarf. That goblin, desperate not to die, but he doesn't have the fight value. A 5 will kill him. A 1 rerollable with the Dwarven Army bonus. Come on. A 6 and the goblin goes down. Wow, so end of an unbelievable turn there. This is the battlefield. No Barlin, no Groblog, no Captain. This has been an absolute battle of titans and a lot has died. The dwarves nearly broken, the goblins broken, all fighting around that central objective. So, massive roll. Will the game end? 1 or a 2? A 6. The game continues for another turn. Turn 14, I believe. Big priority roll here. Goes to the dwarves. Movement. All the dwarves have moved and have tagged up everything except for the 2 drummers who both passed their courage test, hiding behind that water wheel there on the ruins. The 2 remaining heroes engaged in combat. He's going to point him to death there, and everywhere else the goblins are quite surrounded. So straight into the combat phase. We'll start up here with a 3-on-1. So the goblin will shield. Not quite, but he's got his drum banner. No, so trapped. These will be doubled, needing 5s. He is dead. These dwarves back away. Then we'll do 2-on-1. Again, gonna shield with the goblin. And he wins. Oh, in fact, banner still wins. So he's pushed them back. They'll all still be well within the 6 inches of the objective. Here we have a shielding goblin against... We'll just do those 2 and we'll do the banner later if we need to. And it easily goes to the dwarves. So the all going to be needing 5s. These are rerollable, but not needed because that goblin dies. He backs away as well. Oh dear, goblins. So close, but so far away. And so now it is Durbers. He's not got the fight, but he has got the bravery. Durbers on the King's Champion. And that is a 6 to the goblin. Banner reroll for the banner. From the banner is not enough. Come on, Durbers. No wound, but not dead is definitely a bonus. Then we've got 2 goblins on 1. Straight fight because the bowman has no shield, can't shield. And he loses, but he does have a banner, which is a 1 again. So the goblins making strikes. Still, even against this archer, needing 6s. They don't get it. He backs up a little, falls over. And final fight, these 2 here. So that is the banner that has no fate. It's got a spike on it. Instead of this one you might be able to see, it has a little crow. So he will shield just to be safe. Pays off. Although there is the drummery roll, which is a 4. So the banner is going to banner himself into a 6. Unbelievable. And the banner has 1. Oh, and he's shielded, so he is just pushed back. And that is the end of the combat phase. So just at the end of the combat phase then, we will roll a dice. On a 1 or a 2 it ends, and on a 3+ it continues. And that is a 2. And that is the end of the game. So, end of the phase and end of the game. This is how it is looking. Not a lot left. The drum still going there with the 2 drummers. Gerbers, the king, is still alive, but other than that, not a lot of goblins. The dwarves have taken very heavy casualties. They are on 11 remaining, and they had 22 rather to start with. So they are bang on 50%. One more casualty to break them. So let's go through the victory conditions. So hold ground, all about getting to that central objective, that banner in the middle, and models within 6 inches. So the goblins managed just to keep a few alive, stopping the big 7 for the dwarves. If they'd have had only dwarves on the banner, instead it is 5 VPs to 0 there to the dwarves. And then leader kills, however, does go in favour of the goblins. They managed to kill Balin, and the Goblin King is still alive, so it's 5-2, but then break. 1 more dwarf needed to fall for the dwarves to break. So with them breaking the goblins and not being broken themselves, they get 3. So it is an 8-2 victory to the dwarves. So thank you very much for watching. This has been an SBG Battle Report from Tabletop Ramblings. Please do like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.